Look, I thought it might be useful just to put in context the sorts of things that we're wanting to look for in each school's work in terms of leading professional learning. This is the framework that I've discussed with each school. The first key idea is that we're really on about looking at how we're going to reposition each school in terms of literacy, in terms of its knowledge about how to teach literacy. And so in terms of each school's progress and movement, that's really what we want to look at. We need professional learning, and we're relying very largely on the knowledge and skills of all of you to actually lead that. We need to say, what does literacy knowledge actually look like? And there are two key components that we've been wanting to target of this. The student's knowledge and also the teacher's professional knowledge. And as I said at the bottom there, we need to know what each one of them looks like. In terms of looking at the knowledge of how to teach literacy in your school, there's knowledge at three levels. There's the individual teacher knowledge, there's the knowledge of each PLT, and there's also the knowledge of the school as a whole. And a key aspect of your work is, and we've talked about this, is bringing together what the school as a whole knows. So there really is this teaching power in terms of literacy. And in your presentations, I was really keen to hear and tap into how that is being developed. Now, if we look at the knowledge of each teacher, in terms of literacy, what does it look like? So what are the key aspects of any teacher's literacy knowledge? And one is, what does literacy actually look like itself? When the kids are doing literacy, what are they doing? And we've made a big deal of saying they're processing text at the word level, the sentence level, blah, blah, all of those sort of things. So one key aspect that you may well need to target in your work with your colleagues and with the school leadership is, what does literacy actually look like? Because I think, as we've said before, if you're not clear on what it looks like, you're basically spitting into the wind in terms of trying to change it with teaching. If you can't see what something looks like, how can you direct your teaching to it? How can you make sure that your teaching is targeting it? The second was, what do teachers know about effective literacy teaching options? What can they talk about? What do they know to be good practice? And we've made a big deal of saying really explicitly, what are the actual teaching procedures? The third is, what is it that teachers actually do? Because I think in our first session, I made the distinction between what I know to be good practice and what I actually do as a teacher. The fourth issue, the fourth part of my knowledge, is my attitude, my commitment, my disposition towards teaching literacy and towards seeing it as a valuable body of knowledge for my colleagues and for my school to know. And the fifth aspect is, how do I actually read or interpret the teaching context in order to embed the literacy practice? How do I go about looking at the content I'm going to be teaching, the lessons I'll be working through, the situations I'll be making when I'm taking the children on a bus for an excursion? How might I build in literacy activities? So in terms of how I see my knowledge as a teacher of literacy, I would say I've got these different aspects. And from your work in helping your school to change, you need to target each of those. Each of those will need to be targeted to some extent separately. We can apply the same framework to what the schools know. Now, if we're going to examine each aspect of the professional knowledge, and this was part of the dialogue that I had with each of the schools, how will you go about assessing your school's pedagogic capital for literacy? So when you're doing your presentation today, what might be evidence that what your school as a whole knows about literacy has changed? Second is, how well do your colleagues actually put into practice what they know about literacy? What would be indicators of that? And thirdly, what do staff know enough about the topic altogether in order to bring about change? And so we really need data in each of those little cells. You need to know, to be able to tell how your school is travelling, we need to know about each of those cells. If we were going to look at each of those, I've just briefly mentioned there what I said earlier about what each aspect of knowledge could look like. Then if we just unpack these briefly, in terms of what does literacy knowledge look like, where do you go to see that? Well, you can look at what the NAPLAN believes literacy knowledge looks like. We can look at the VERLS continuum. I think that's a good place to start, but anyway. And you can also look at the model that we've been using to say that when we read, there are various things we do. And I've taken that from the research. You know, those sort of things. You know, when we read, we need to comprehend what words mean. We need to comprehend the sentences. We need to put together the sentences. We need to know the topic. We've made a big deal of saying it's certainly not done in that order. It's all done at once. We're able to manage our reading, manage our learning activity, but we need to do all of those things.